Hello, everybody, and welcome back to TMR's Check-In Podcast. I'm Dan McCarthy, and my guest today is Kenny Dunn, who is the managing director and founder of Eating Europe, one of the first and now largest tour operators specializing in culinary tours in Europe. I was really happy to talk to Kenny, first to get his take on this explosion in culinary travel, which to me is part of this growing segment of experiential travel as a whole. Something that I know travel advisors have really felt the last 2 or 3 years. My take on it is that if you really want to feel like a local, if you really want to get an authentic perspective of what life is like in another part of the world, then there's no better way to do it than to eat what the locals are eating. I don't think there's a better way to remember some place or some time than to try the foods that you can't really find anywhere else. To taste things that are only available there and then. Culinary everything has sort of taken off over the last 5 years. It's all over our televisions. It's all over our social media feeds. But to me, it comes down to this craving from people for authentic experiences. This craving for things that not just taste good, but that represent something, that represent uh, another part, another place, another segment of the world. A second, I really also want to talk to Kenny about being an entrepreneur. He tells the story in the episode, but Eating Europe came from him knowing that he was living in a foreign country. He's originally from Philadelphia and now lives in Rome. Without a stable income down the line and deciding to try to figure it out one way or another, deciding to take a leap and start a company doing something that not many people were doing at the time. He started Eating Europe in 2011, and over the last, because it's been 14 years now, he's in 20 cities all across of Europe, employing tour guides all over the continent, all stemming from a business he started simply because he was bringing friends and family who were visiting him in Rome around to the best spots to eat. He spoke to me in a hotel hallway in Barcelona, a city he was in because he was making a deal to acquire another culinary tour operator, further expanding his business, further driving things forward, not resting on the success he's already found in this industry. I think this segment of the travel industry, not culinary tours, but travel advisors and travel agency owners in general, is one of the best examples of a group of entrepreneurs all doing things very differently, but all brave enough to take that initial leap into business ownership. A leap that so many other people outside of and inside of travel have been too afraid or not willing to take. And I don't think that's really spoken about enough. We talk about a lot of things in this industry, a lot of things about the unique characteristics of travel advisors, but that lack of fear is something that I'm so admirable about. When you're sitting in these giant conference rooms and you're surrounded by other travel advisors, you have to realize you're amongst people who are all able to take that leap. And I think it's really something special, something I wish the industry spoke about and recognized a little more. I want to thank Kenny again for the conversation. If you're interested in finding more about Eating Europe, you can go to eatingeurope.com, which is his website. Um, and if you're interested in finding a little more, see if you can get your clients on those trips, you can also find it through that website. So thanks to Kenny. Thanks to all of you for giving us your time and giving us a listen today. And hope to see you all down the line soon. All right, cool. Well, nice to meet you.
Likewise. Where are you
You're
based, Danny?
I'm in New York. I'm in Brooklyn.
Oh, cool.
And you're in Rome, right?
I would normally be in Rome. That's where I'm based. I happen to be in Barcelona. Uh, we have tours here, and so I was here for work, and yeah, so I'm kind of sitting on the floor in the hotel because the Wi-Fi in my room isn't as strong as it is in the lobby. But
Okay.
yeah, normally I'd be in Rome. Originally from Philadelphia, lived in New York for a few years myself, and yeah, that's part of
How
my story.
long how long have you been in Rome for now?
It's been about 15 years.
Okay. So originally from Philly, then New York, Rome. Like how'd you end up in Rome?
Well, it wasn't quite New York, then Rome. New York, bunch of places, then Rome. But I ended up in Rome. So my now ex-wife got a job. We met in DC in grad school. She got a job for the UN, one of the agencies that's based in Rome. Moved for what was supposed to be like a year, 13 months. And as life goes, it turned out to be 15 and counting. So we'll see. Who knows? Maybe I'll end up living the rest of my life in Rome. But it wasn't the plan. It's worked out pretty good. And yeah, there you go.
So I'm curious. Rome is one of those cities that people talk about when it comes to like these cities in Europe changing because of tourism specifically. Like they talk about overcrowding a lot. They talk about the issues this influx of international travelers is causing it in these cities. Are have from the 15 years you lived in Rome, have you seen the city significantly change? Like, and do you think that change is due to tourism now?
I haven't seen it. No, I mean, last year was the first time where people were really kind of saying, "Oh my God, I've never seen so many tourists." But every year, like in the peak season from after Easter to kind of mid October, it is a city that's it's one of the most popular destinations in the world, certainly in Europe. It's got a lot of tourists in the center, and it's always been like that. Maybe last year, I think it felt even more kind of crowded. But to your specific question, like I don't, at least in these 15 years, I haven't really seen any big changes in terms of kind of a reaction to that. I think the city's main economy is tourism. So many people are kind of involved in it in one way or another, and that's just part of kind of the life of living in a city. Just like in New York, it'd be like, God, Times Square is packed with tourists right now. It's like, yeah, it's always been packed with tourists.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
so now in other cities, I think like in Amsterdam, or obviously Barcelona, where I'm sitting now, has gotten a lot of press because I think, or Lisbon, where 10 years ago it wasn't. Lisbon, wasn't a massive tourist destination. And over the last like 7 years, it's really blown up. And so that's a city where when people say things have really changed, rents have gone up, like I know they mean it because I went there 13 years ago and it is a drastic change. With Rome, it's like it was always crowded. Maybe it's been a little more crowded, like with tourists. And Amsterdam is also one where I think like it's a smaller city in terms of geographical footprint. And you feel it, and the city still and local residents are starting to say like, "Whoa, this is not the Amsterdam that I want to live in or raise kids in," or and so I wouldn't say what I said about Rome applies to all cities, but to
yeah.
Rome, that's my personal perspective.
Yeah, I mean, New York does some parts of the year it does feel overbearing, like Christmas time and things like that. Not only when you're getting international tourists, but you're getting tourists from like the surrounding states in New York or the
Definitely.
surrounding areas. It does feel overbearing. But I mean, the city's kind of built for that. Like that's a good point because I mean, everyone talks about these trending cities, and I think people have talked about Lisbon for a long time as like the next city in Europe, like the next city. Like you should go to Lisbon, you shouldn't go to Barcelona, you should go to Lisbon, you shouldn't go to X, you should go to Lisbon. And I guess if the city's not built for it, infrastructure wise, it is going to cause some issues. And yeah,
Yeah, I mean, some of it is just infrastructure, and some of it I just think is it can be a big change, and I think it's an adjustment, and for those who do have a tourist attraction or company or restaurant or drive a taxi or something, maybe it's a real welcome change. And for a lot of other people, it's not. So all the people who aren't benefiting, I think, rightfully have issues with kind of, and cruise ships are a huge game changer.
yeah,
I mean, because it's 4,000 people and nowadays up to seven potentially pouring into a city. And if you've got three of those docking at once, that's like it's like a flash flood, and so that can be a real kind of shift too if somewhere suddenly sees the cruise trade like Dubrovnik. I think it's happened in the last 10 or so years where it's just, wow, this is unsustainable kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know there's been big headlines this summer about some of the reactions to tourism in some places with locals being pretty outspoken against it. I think it does feel like a problem that the industry has dealt with for a long time. Like it doesn't seem to be nothing new. Maybe the coverage of it is new, but it is interesting that you do get a sector of the economy that desperately needs tourism, but then you get people who maybe aren't benefiting from it, and there is going to be a difference of reaction between the two when it comes to an increase in visitors coming in. So
Yeah. No,
yeah,
and I don't want to, just to clarify, like, I don't want to say that it's not new. I think, as I said, with Lisbon and places with Barcelona, which really since the Olympics is where they kind of, mark when that really became a more international destination for tourists. There is kind of like a tipping point, not like, not in kind of a sustainability sense, but like you pass a certain threshold and maybe then people are like, wow, this is really impacting things. And that's where you get kind of a reaction and blowback. And that's what I think you're seeing in Amsterdam and Barcelona in certain areas. But, and flights are cheaper with all of these, lower cost European travel. There's more routes now. We
yeah,
surpassed 2019 this year. So I don't want to say like, oh, this is just same old story. In certain places like a Rome, I feel like the changes are a lot more, or that the amount of tourists, it's a lot more incremental than it is maybe in a city where in Lisbon, where over those same 10 years, that change has been much more significant.
yeah. The percentage increase is less in Rome than elsewhere, I guess.
Yeah.
So you're in Barcelona. Are you like what are you doing out there? Are you sourcing vendors? Are you like trying food? Like what's sort of your gig when you
Um,
get out to these cities?
so we opened up in Barcelona this year. So sometimes what will take me to a city is just to meet with the local manager. So
Right.
sometimes I'll
Right.
come to a city to speak to a local manager, audit the tours, meet some of the vendors, do a tour with guests, and kind of get a chance to, you know, uh, see it through their eyes and chat with them, which is a little different than just reading reviews. Um, the reason why I'm here right now is we actually just acquired another local food tour operator, one of the oldest in the city, called the Barcelona Taste.
Okay.
Eating Europe's been around. It'll be 15 years next year. They actually, so we started in 2011. They started in 2009. So really one of the pioneers here in Barcelona. And this is such an established market. We're really excited to now kind of have, brought them into the fold. Their two owners, their wonderful guide team, all of their vendors, their restaurants that they've been working with for years. So I came to finalize that and kind of raise
Okay.
a glass of cava with the two owners and meet all of the guides. And this is an exciting new kind of chapter for both of our companies, really.
Yeah. So you said 15 years with Eating Europe. I want to sort of take this time to ask you about like starting the company, like maybe some of the logistics and like how you built an audience, things like that. And then I have some food questions, but like 15 years is a pretty big accomplishment. I know you had different careers before you entered this kind of business. I'm curious, like, what was the motivation for jumping into food tours? I guess in general, like what was the motive? What was the reasoning behind thinking that this would be something you'd be able to do for the next 15 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. How did I end up dedicating now 15 years of my life to food tours? Especially as you said, I mean, this was totally new for me. So it
Because
was a
even 15 years ago, I don't like I know food is a huge thing now, but it doesn't seem like social media was at the point where like a culinary tour would be so eye catching or so enticing for so many travelers 15 years ago.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was very, very early days for food tours. So for my personal kind of how I got involved in this sector, let's say, a little bit was necessity slash desperation
Okay.
slash kind of passion and interest, and then kind of my entrepreneurial spirit, which I've had inside me since I was, in high school. So the necessity, desperation, I was living in Rome. I worked for the UN for a year. My contract ended, and it had been like, I don't know, 8 or 10 months of me trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And as those months kind of accrued, that feeling of I really need to figure this out quickly continued to grow and grow inside. Um, so that's always a great impetus for any change in
Yeah,
life, is just this
desperation. Yeah.
feeling of kind of desperation. Then living in a city like Rome, you get tons of friends and family and visitors left and right, especially in the early years. And I got tired of going to the Colosseum and the Vatican. So I started taking people around my neighborhood, which was basically kind of an informal food tour, because we'd go and get a cappuccino in the morning. We'd wander over 2 blocks to the market. I'd introduce them to Maria, where I bought my vegetables, and Cesare, who was the butcher who I always went to. And, as we were making this tour, I'd point things out and be like, oh, you know what those are? Those are actually zucchini flowers. They're so good. You dip them in flour and egg and fry them and stuff them with mozzarella and anchovies. And at the end of doing this, maybe 5 or 6 times with friends, I kept hearing like, that was so much fun. Like, that was even better than going to the Vatican yesterday. And so I was starting to get some encouragement, like, you should really think about doing this with tourists. And around that time, I discovered that something called a food tour existed, because I had never personally been exposed as a traveler. Um, and um, and so a combination of having that push from friends and family that really need to kind of start something new and wanting to do something entrepreneurial, and seeing proof of concept in New York, and then later I saw there was one in Chicago, all kind of added up to, you know what, let's do this. And so I took a leap of faith in 2010, started working on building a website and kind of writing the itinerary and everything and the script. And then in 2011, put it on TripAdvisor, got my first booking, and was suddenly in business.
So, were you? I assume you were the first, like you were the original tour guide. It was you personally bringing people around Rome.
Yeah, I mean, in the very beginning, I was probably doing the tour once or twice a week. Luckily for me, it gained traction pretty quickly. So I was then doing the tour 6 days a week,
Oh my god.
every week for the first 8 months. So that's eating a lot of carbonara, amatriciana, cacio e pepe. Those were the three pasta dishes we served. And that was my lunch every single day for 6 days. And finally, after I think it was maybe 8 or 9 months, I hired a couple guides. Still was working because we had enough demand where we needed all three of us, with me being one of the three. And then, kind of in that second year, I really started to focus more on kind of back of the house. All right, let's really get marketing in place. And I hired a marketing manager and hired an operations manager. And, that's where I started to put systems in place and started to think kind of, how can I really start to scale this?
So you mentioned you put the tour on TripAdvisor. Like that was the primary audience generator for you, was people coming to Rome. I assume TripAdvisor would be Americans or maybe British people coming to Rome and looking for experiences.
Yeah, TripAdvisor was definitely the catalyst. I mean, TripAdvisor is still a huge channel and discovery platform for tours and activities. But back then, because there was less of them, it really was, in some ways, the only game in town. Yelp for European tours and activities didn't exist. Google reviews was not yet launched. So if you wanted to read reviews and discover things to do, that was all on TripAdvisor. So getting listed on TripAdvisor was, well, not getting listed, but showing up high on the rankings on TripAdvisor was really the best way to be discovered. And because so many people went to TripAdvisor, um, if you could climb up the rankings and get on that first page, that top 20, then you were in full takeoff mode. In terms of where people were coming from in general, and this isn't just from me and Eating Europe, but all the tour operators I know and have met and spoken to over 15 years, predominantly for tours and activities, not just food tours. Um, in Europe, they're consumed or purchased by Americans. So we, from the early days and carries on to today, we get people from all over the world, but the lion's share are, North Americans.
Yeah, well, I'm curious. The TripAdvisor thing really stands out to me because my thought is that it would be way more difficult nowadays to start a food tour company and to get on that first page of TripAdvisor. Like it seems like maybe like you hit it at the right time. I guess it was the right way to say it, because it seems like people have established businesses now, and the aggregated sites, including TripAdvisor, are way more difficult to sort of build a business on.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think for different reasons. I mean, one, TripAdvisor, it used to be much more, let's say, streamlined. You'd go on, you'd click on things to do in Rome, and that top 20 could be the Colosseum, a Segway tour, a cooking class, a food tour, um, and, and any of those different kinds of products could kind of find its way if you had the reviews and continued to move up the ranks on that first page. Nowadays, I mean, part of it is there's just so much more product. So, number one, there isn't really even a first page of TripAdvisor. You go, you choose the kind of activity you want. So, in some ways, that's better for the consumer because it allows you to filter. On the other hand, like you click food tours, well, we're listed under food tours, we're listed under food and wine, we're in so many places, and it's just a lot busier. I mean, my personal opinion is, from like a UX experience, there's just so much more. It can be a little overwhelming. So I think it's harder to break through that noise now than it was, 15 years ago. On the other hand, I guess a counterpoint to that might be there's more, there's Get Your Guide, there's more platforms. I was going to say Get Your Guide and Viator, which both of them existed at that time. But, I think their kind of position in the market has grown. I know it has. Airbnb experiences, they just had the massive relaunch. So you do have more places to distribute your tour, um, but yeah, certainly we really were lucky. I was really lucky with the timing. Um, being the first food tour company in Rome, that first mover advantage was it was of course very consequential. And yeah, so I think there's some things that make it a little easier today, and other things which certainly make it harder.
You mentioned Airbnb experiences. I know them relaunching experience was like pretty significant for the industry, particularly people who are going direct to consumer. It seems like every OTA now, or most OTAs, or most other companies, even like the travel suppliers, are starting to really dig into experiences. And I'm curious, from someone who's done experiences for 15 years, like, do you see this area more populated than before? Like, have you realized, or have you seen that other more established companies have seen an area that you've grown a business into as a way that they can sort of take some market share? Like, why do you think more companies are getting into experiences nowadays?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, I think everyone sees that kind of that things to do, that tours and activities and attractions part of travel is something that for years wasn't getting the attention it deserved. I mean, Airlines were the first big kind of vertical, then hotels, and now you're starting to see a lot of the same kind of things happen, that same life cycle with tours and activities, because it's such a massive, massive industry, and there's so much spend going into it. And then, with COVID, a big narrative coming out of COVID was people really wanted to spend their disposable income on experiences and
Yeah.
do things rather than kind of just buy things. So less kind of consumer goods and more experiential services. And travels obviously had a massive rebound, since COVID. And so, those two things, just more people traveling and more people wanting to do things when they travel and experience. And while the main kind of points of interest, the Colosseum, the Louvre, Eiffel Tower, are getting record numbers, so are all these other things that, like food tours and cooking classes and wine tastings and you know um, tuk-tuk rides and, uh,
Yeah.
Ferrari, renting a Ferrari in the Tuscan countryside, like all of those kind of things that people want to be part of their holiday have really grown. And so it's just all this supplies come up to meet the demand. And to the other aspect of your question, yeah, you are seeing other large operators really, really kind of get involved, because this is such a big part of the industry now that they have to.
You know, I mean I agree with you. I mean, obviously like the authentic experiences and the experiential travel has increased pretty significantly, but I don't think any of them have increased within that segment more than culinary stuff. I mean, if I like one video on Instagram about food, like something in New York happening with food, like there's just so much content out there with food. It's just like so interesting to me that food has like create become this like powerhouse on the internet when you physically can't taste something on the internet. Like people just want to see other people eat. And that's always sort of piqued my interest, is that why maybe it's because it's easy to describe or it is nice to look at, but like why do you think food has become such a sensation? It's weird for me to say, but a sensation online and in marketing and things like that.
No, Daniel, I've said the same thing for years. And just to add another wrinkle to what you're saying is, and for me, it's like we've always eaten food. Like it's not like suddenly, it's not like pickleball where,
Yeah.
10 years ago, nobody knew what it was. Now it's been discovered and everyone's playing because they love it. We've always eaten food, and there's always been, not always, but for years and years, Zagat's and other places to read about food. But in the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years, we now know chefs' names and they're rock stars, and there's so many travel shows around food. And like you said, on social media, nothing blows up more. And so there's like a cookie place in Amsterdam, blew up on Instagram, and there is a line of 50 to 100 people at any time of day that they're open. And it's incredible to just see this kind of wave of enthusiasm by people when I have to go eat that, I have to go try that. And then when that happens, all the celebrity stuff that kind of, you know, celebrities opening food places and putting their name behind it and everything else. Um, I think it's something, we've always had, and now people are just discovering, I don't know, how great it can be, how, when you eat something, especially that has a real sense of place, you can only get this in Lisbon.
Yeah.
That's great. I've always felt when I was traveling way before, any of this stuff, like from 2003 to 6, like food eating was my favorite part of everywhere I went, like street food stalls and going to local markets. So to me, yeah, that just makes sense. And I guess, yeah, the other thing is, it can be quite food porn and just that eye
Yeah, yeah,
candy of like a stretchy grilled cheese sandwich with a nice cheese pool. It really does kind of play well in a visual sense. And the last thing I'd say is it's accessible to everyone. Maybe not Michelin star restaurants, but we all have to eat. I think we all, in varying degrees, like to eat. So, unlike the pickleball example, well, if you're not into racket sports or sports in general, well, that's just not going to interest you. But food, it's such a common denominator. So, and
yeah,
when you travel, you can see all the attractions, but what are you going to do in between? We have to go out to dinner. We have to have lunch.
yeah.
Maybe breakfast is at the hotel, but so it's kind of baked into every holiday. So why not make the most of it?
Yeah, I think the argument that's most compelling to me is you mentioned about sort of getting a taste or getting something specific to that locale. Like you can't get got to eat bagels in New York or the Italian food in Rome, obviously, or things like that. Like that seems to be part of it. I think that's the argument that's probably most compelling to me. Um, so I wanted to ask. So you 15 years ago you started in Europe, and obviously you mentioned in Barcelona right now, like expanding operations. How many cities are you in currently?
So now we're in 20 cities,
Oh my
which
god.
is really exciting because, when COVID happened, we were only in 10. And so, to go from COVID and not even sure if you're going to survive to manage to get through, and now to have this, really phenomenal growth over the last few years is really exciting to think, just 4 years ago, how kind of tenuous everything seemed. But yeah, this year we opened up our 20th city.
How many continents?
Continent's just one. We're
Just
eating
Europe.
Europe, so we've
Okay.
stayed true to just being in Europe.
But so you spent. You mentioned you spent time a lot. Or you grew up in the U.S. Like I imagine you don't have any aspirations to get operations outside of Europe.
No, I mean, that is something we, as a management team, have discussed and looked at, and um, it's definitely a possibility. I mean, the last couple of years, the strategic focus has really been trying to kind of offer what we do, which is kind of a local taste
Okay.
of all of these cities in all the major destinations in Europe. There's still kind of a handful more that I think we'd love to open up in. Um, and of course, there's incredible food scenes and places all over the United States, as well as in other parts of the world, um, really anywhere you go. And so expanding beyond Europe is certainly a possibility. It's just right now the focus hasn't been on that at this point.
All right, so I just have a couple more, and I know it's late for you. So I really appreciate your time.
No, it's not. It's not too late.
Um, so what I wanted to ask about overrated cities, but I don't think I want to ask that question. But I guess underrated. Like I know people think about Rome, they think about the food probably pretty instantly. Any city in Italy is probably the same. But like, are there underrated European food cities that you've been to that you really love, or that you maybe have operations or don't, or have operations in, or don't have operations in and want to be there? Like, what city do you think is maybe overlooked right now when it comes to the culinary scene in Europe?
Mm, I would say Porto was a real surprise for me. I didn't know too much about food in Porto, and just loved not only some of the things I ate, like the bifana, but just the authenticity. What speaks to me very much is going to a place that has a lot of these old school institutions that feels like you could have been in there 25 years ago and it would have looked the exact same. So I was on our tour. We feature a bunch of them, and that kind of authenticity maintained over time is something I appreciate. So I would definitely start with Porto. Yeah, underrated is tough. I mean, Prague, I think, is an interesting one because a lot of people show up in Prague and you have no idea what people eat other than beer, which of course isn't even a food, but like beer, and you might think about, I don't know, strudel or something, even though most people would associate that more with kind of Austria or Germany. Um, and so that just lends itself to being kind of delighted and surprised, to go in some of these really regal, kind of magnificent old cafes and have coffee and cakes, or to have, dumplings and this lovely meat dish that it's called svitskava, which I think that's what it's called. um, which has this, kind of carrot, almost like sweet sauce on top of it, gravy, kind of, and yeah, I'm trying to think. These open face sandwiches. This
Yeah.
place we go to with beetroot and goat cheese, and the bread's amazing, and it's so colorful. So what makes it underrated is you go in with like a blank, no expectations, blank sheet, and suddenly you're trying these things, and you're like, wow, this is really good. And what is this again? As you can hear, I don't remember if I'm pronouncing that one dish right. And so yeah, Prague has really surprised me. Um, Anything else?
So that I mean, that
Yeah.
seems like something you try to do on these tours is give them authentic experiences, or like give them places, local places, places the locals eat at is what you want to showcase, those kind of dishes.
Yeah, I mean, what we're trying to do is take you to a place where you think, wow, I would have never found this place on my own. So, you take that a step further. I'm so glad I did this tour because otherwise I wouldn't have been here. Um, and then it's kind of a mix of wanting to offer up those iconic dishes, whether it's fish and chips or, pasta del nata, the custard tarts in Lisbon, or Dutch pancakes in Amsterdam. I mean, we want to kind of give you like a really good, best in class version of the iconic dishes and talk about why this tastes so much better than maybe some of the other ones you'll find, I don't know, in more touristy spots. Um, and then surprise you with things that you might not have tried or heard of, like Lampredotto in Florence is a part of the stomach lining, which might sound a little unappealing,
Yeah.
but it's really nicely cooked. It's served with this green sauce that's made with garlic and parsley, and a really nice roll. And everyone who tries it, or 97.5%, are like, wow, that was so good. I never would have thought I would have liked it. And that's probably the most popular local street food in Florence. And so, yeah, iconic local dishes, some of them that have kind of international fame, others which you've never heard of, served in places that, locals still go to, that are off the beaten path and that have a really good story, the place itself and the people behind it.
Okay. So you mentioned at the beginning when you were building the company that you called yourself an entrepreneur, and I know you've been doing this 15 years, but I'm curious, like, do you, if you had to start a business now in maybe in travel, or like start something in a specific segment in travel, maybe something outside of what you've already been successful with, like what would you start now? Like, do you see the industry as a whole, or do you see like opportunities? Do you see trends within the industry that pique your interest in any way?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I personally, I'm bullish on kind of experiences with people, even with the advent of AI and things like that. And there's some kind of skeptics. For me, I think there's still that human contact that people want. I feel like, I don't know if this is a business I would necessarily start, but a gap I think is in a lot of places you go, and in the evening, with the exception of maybe London with the East End and going to see a show, there's just a real lack of kind of local kind of cultural activities, not necessarily like folkloric dance, which, you know, in a lot of places does exist and has its audience, but it's not for everyone. But you know, I lived in New York City like you do, and living in New York, I'd go to blues clubs and jazz clubs and stand-up comedy clubs and improv clubs, and I loved all that. And kind of in Europe, you know, you don't necessarily see too much of kind of things you can do that maybe are either just done there or is kind of the Parisian version of that. Um, and so I think there is an opportunity to create some experiences, not a tour, but that people could enjoy, particularly in the evening, that would still have a sense of place, you know, still feel like, oh, I could only really have done this in Paris, or this is the Paris version of whatever it is.
Yeah, particularly I guess the maybe the smaller cities, I can definitely see that because I've had that experience or that feeling when you are you are making plans for the evening and you know you're going to eat dinner, but you don't know what's going to happen after that. So I think I there's definitely a gap there. All right. Well, I think that's all my questions, Kenny. I really want to say thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I know, again, you're probably in the middle of a lot of things in Barcelona, so I really appreciate the time.
No, absolutely. This was a total pleasure, Daniel. It's actually not late. It's 6:30, and in Spanish terms,
I guess
that's like 2 in the afternoon in Brooklyn. So because people eat dinner at like 10. So no, total pleasure.